Start recording. So anyway, I just wanted to say that it was they had us way ahead of the curve by having these Zoom webinars going even back then, so we could all quickly huddle. And we were doing the same thing for for COVID before it was even called COVID. And he's been fantastic, even though he's made some moves. He's still there with us, and I said again, I never call this the Craig Manifold Memorial. It just is the Craig Manifold lectureship, and it's all stewarded by our next medical student du jour. And we thank you so much then for everything you've done for us, Julian. Really means a lot. So, all right. So let's today is mostly I did want to talk about with the nuances of this thing. There was a TV show thing I wanted to run, but maybe we could just discuss it anyways. But what made this a little bit unique for me in many respects is it was interesting because the day before I was having lunch with my son and mentioned what are the 5 different things that you need to know about hurricanes in Florida. And I talked about everything from the electrical cars blowing up to that may not be totally as relevant to Florida, but we can do. But the other thing was the tornadoes, and a lot of places have actually been built or established, like hospitals that said where they actually have generators and/or the operating rooms or the ICUs right in the middle of the building. Many floors up, so in case there's flooding, and many floors down away from tornadoes, because people forget about the tornadoes that are generated. But this was extraordinary about what happened here in terms of the number of tornadoes that were generated. And a lot of them seem to be south of the storm as well. It was having that kind of effect. For example, we have pretty impressive one way down in outside of Fort Lauderdale on I-75, the Alligator Alley pathway. And then we had them up in Wellington, Palm Beach Gardens and all that. And so Angus, do you have any insight into that, or what they're telling you, why it generates so much tornadoes? Why is this one a little different?
Well, so this was a very unique storm in terms of the direction it approached Florida from. And so this is really only, the weather people were saying, it's really only been, it's been about 100 years since we had one sort of come in this particular orientation and this particular trajectory. And so because it approached from the west instead of the east, and because of the spin of a hurricane, right, you ended up with these really strong bands of feeder bands basically going south to north over the coast of Florida. And then there was a cold front on the top of it. So sort of we always talk about the dirty and the non-dirty side of the hurricane. This was a case of the dirty side of the hurricane really just parking itself over the Florida peninsula. And so we had just some record 100-something tornado warnings in a matter of 6 hours across the state, separate from the impacts of the storm eye itself.
Yeah, and the other thing was fascinating about this one was apparently I think it has the record for the lowest millibars, at least in this hemisphere, or at least on this side of the planet. They may have had more in monsoons, but from what I understand, this was this was just extraordinary in terms of it went down below 900 millibars.
Below 900, that's scary stuff.
And what was the explanation for why it went from a 5 to the 4 to the 5 to the 3, etc.? Was there an explanation? It has to do with the Gulf water temperature, or what is that?
So in the Gulf, there's something called the loop current. If you fish like me, you know about ocean currents and temperature gradients.
Yeah.
And so there's a loop current that comes sort of up the Mexican coast on the west side of the Gulf, and then tries to go across the Florida Strait in between Florida and Cuba to become the Gulf Stream. But a part of it sort of goes off and eddies around the middle of the Gulf as a circle of warm water, which is known as the loop current, that then comes back down, goes around the tip of Florida and up in what's called the Gulf Stream current.
Yeah.
So the loop current is a big area of deep, warm water that provides just an amazing amount of fuel to a hurricane.
You're right.
It also has really good fishing, in case you're wondering.
Okay, good to know. Listen, I'm going to come back to you in a second as I want to talk to you about Tampa General, but Jim has his hand up and I got to get to Joe Holly before he has to leave. Okay.
Just a couple additional points. Helene stirred up the area right along the shore the week before and cooled the water a little bit. That made a big difference. The difference in those bands that Angus is talking about. Angus, how much rain did you have in your area?
We had 12 inches in 7 hours locally here.
Yeah, we had an inch and a half in our area of Florida, an inch and a half, and he had up to 19 inches in some areas, they said, in your area. The bottom of the hurricane dried out and really surprised people. And then those tornadoes, Paul, were impressive. They were Kansas looking tornadoes. Those
Yeah.
don't happen.
Oh,
Those
it's
don't
amazing.
happen.
Yeah. I wish I had Marshall Frank on. I don't think he's on with us, but I'd like to hear what happened in Sarasota. I wonder what happened to Mick Jagger's place. He's got a place in Sarasota, so we'll have to see because that's the biggest area that hit. So I've always heard that Seattle.
Marshall said he came through okay.
Okay,
And Sarasota Memorial was doing okay. It sounded like there was some issues a little further south towards Charlotte. So,
okay.
But Marshall is okay.
All right, good to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. I was going to try to reach out to him. All right. So Joe Holly, I'm going to come back to you in a second, if you don't mind, Angus. I
have to get off at noon, Paul, just so you know.
Okay, yeah, got it. And the same thing, I think, with Joe has to go off even earlier, I think. So I just want to get to him and see what's the latest up in North Carolina. Joe, what are you facing up there?
Hi, Paul. Yes, I'm currently still in North Carolina. We're winding down operations here with the idea that hopefully we'll be complete by end of the weekend. I have several colleagues that are part of the FEMA search and rescue system that are active in Florida now. And obviously you've heard from boots on the ground down there already.
Yeah.
So still wrapping things up here. One thing I did want to throw out, and this is just awareness, honestly, to have folks really appreciate the dangers associated with these activities. We had one of our federal teams out of California involved in a severe motor vehicle accident several days ago now, with 3 significant injuries, 2 of which are life-altering injuries. And they're all doing as well as can be expected, but a massive price to pay for response into dangerous areas during search and rescue efforts.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I missed that. Was that USAR team members you said?
That's correct. Those are federal USAR team members that were injured.
Oh man, sorry.
So, hey Joe, so anything unusual? We talked last week a little bit about the things to expect, like getting cut on debris or getting, slipping and falling or getting snakes at you or finding dead bodies and things like that you're out there doing. Anything else unusual? Right now, there's not. Go ahead.
Yes. So I guess the unusual things that have occurred in the last day or so have been a significant number of bears
No kidding.
walking through people's camps in search of food.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no direct interactions related to that. I just learned this morning that while one of our teams was doing some human remains detection with human remains dogs, they were investigating a large pile of debris, and the team was delayering that pile in an effort to ascertain, give the dogs a better shot. They literally uncovered a live dog that had been trapped in that pile for over a week now, that they managed to rescue intact, and he was actually looking pretty good. So
nice.
A live rescue of a dog of all things.
That's great. I love it. And by the way, you remember about the bears looking for food. I saw that video, Angus, of the that alligator trying to eat the tire of that car. Did you see that thing? I didn't know it was on the news. It
No,
was-
I didn't.
That
Didn't see
was
that.
really pretty funny. Someone happened to capture that. Just came out of nowhere. But yeah, so anyways, a lot of bizarre stories. One thing is I generally tell people don't get into a car when there's a tornado. Most of the tornadoes that I've seen, the only people that got killed, even if you had like what looked like an atomic bomb going through a neighborhood, is that when people were in their cars, they get swept up in there, and that's really the killer out there. So, any of that. So, Angus, tell us about the place we were worried about, and we were, and rightfully so, was Tampa General. They always say it's on an island. I guess you could call it peninsular or whatever, but either way, it's
No,
out.
actually, it is on an island. It's on
Yeah.
Davis Island, which is right off of downtown Tampa. You have to go over a little bridge to get it.
Right. Okay.
They put up something called an aqua fence around the hospital, which will hold back like a 12-foot storm surge. You may have seen some pictures on the news.
Yes.
Pretty impressive. We've done it a couple times now. It generally works. I don't. I was not in the hospital for this because I was in the EOC, but supposedly it worked pretty well. On Helene, they did have some flooding in one portion of the hospital, but in general, it kept them in business. So it seems to work pretty well.
That's great. Yeah, because I was really worried about because they were talking about possible 15, 16-foot surges, and then but the thing held up, it sounds like. So that's really good. Tell us a little bit about the construction, about where they put generators or where they put ICUs and operating rooms there.
Yeah, so at Tampa General, everything's up high, of course. I'm not sure who decided to put the level 1 academic trauma center on an island at sea level, but anyway, great idea. That hospital has actually spent a lot of resources being ready for disasters. We have some other hospitals that have not. So at least on my side of the bay, a level 1 or what we call a level A evac is like 3.5 hospitals and 50 nursing homes. And we do that a couple times a year, but this time where I am, we were up to a level C evac, which gets us a couple more hospitals and a bunch more nursing homes and assisted livings. We ended up only evacuating one hospital, which we finished like last night, and that was from primarily rain flooding that overflowed into the hospital basement. And fried their switchgear for their generator. We thought at one point we were going to evacuate every hospital in the city of St. Pete, but thankfully didn't have to.
I'm going to come back to you in a second because I want to hear about what you heard from people around. If you can think about it around the state, other medical directors. As a state medical director, you probably heard or concerned about those. But first on the hospital thing, Jim Augustine, I was wondering if you could mention, do you know anything about the things like hospital planning and things have gone wrong in the past or gone right in the past or whatever?
Yeah, well, we had a perfect example of that. Our hospitals in nearby counties closed. One closed, 2 weeks ago from Helene damage. Then we had the other two, including a big stroke center, closed in Charlotte County. And then Sarasota County had to evacuate one or two of their hospitals and severely disrupt the operation of their big trauma center. Those patients were moving south into our area because they didn't want to move the patients north. And south here has limited hospital resources. So we filled up the hospitals in Collier County. They came to the ED for transport, for movement upstairs, overwhelmed the emergency department. So those kind of things were happening in Florida. And many times the hospital planners aren't exactly in contact with the emergency planners and the ED physicians and the EMS physicians. They're using federal resources, so they're out of the usual communication loop. So that was pre-hurricane and really caused some issues then with availability of resources once the hurricane did hit, Paul.
That's good news. I mean, that's good things for people to understand about it. Maybe proactively get together, particularly in your state. Have you ever heard of people putting generators and things like that in the wrong place and then learned a lesson from it?
Certainly did. So Joplin, Missouri put their backup generators in a separate reinforced concrete building, which still didn't stand up to an F5 tornado. And lucky they didn't, because the gases released would have exploded if they'd had electrical sources. In New York City, they well, in Katrina, any of the below ground generators were flooded.
Right.
New York City put them on the roof, and they thought they had solved the issue. And then in Hurricane Sandy, they realized getting fuel to the roof is a really difficult thing when the electric pumps aren't working. So you had to hand jack fuel to the top. So Tampa General established a second island 33 feet above sea level for their power plant. There's nothing perfect, Paul, and something is going to affect each of these buildings.
And everything is putting on the roof, but then you're a target for the tornadoes. Yeah, and we just saw the spawn of tornado. I've never seen anything like this before. 100 tornadoes, more than that. Yeah. So that's why I was asking. That's what made this thing really different. And so, I mean, it's just a couple of interesting thoughts. Okay, what happened around the state? What have you heard from your fellow EMS medical directors, Angus?
Honestly, I haven't heard a lot beyond my local area because I literally just came out of my EOC.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Peter's on and he had the Florida webinar half an hour ago. Did you hear anything from anybody else, Peter?
We had some pretty bad tornadoes in Palm Beach County, and we had like a bit of an MCI with some folks who there were about 10 people were stuck under these trailer homes that were just made into rubble.
Yeah.
And then
I call them tornado magnets, right? Those things.
Yeah, they are. It was pretty bad. But we got a lot of resources out there. But then I was keeping in touch with Marshall. I'm not sure if Marshall's on today, but he's out in Sarasota where I think they took the biggest hit. And just from the text, he said that there was a lot of flooding and so forth, but I didn't really get the gist of the magnitude of the damage out there. Maybe other people know better than I do.
I do, Peter. If it's okay, I'll go through.
Oh, yeah.
So we established a regional Eagles group for Southwest Florida. Marshall, Charlotte County, Manatee, Collier-Lee, in our inner counties stayed in touch. Charlotte evacuated. Sarasota had their remaining center where Marshall is, and they evacuated to Miami Baptist system, Peter. So they moved as many patients as they could, stabilized the big center, had to evacuate the smaller centers in the county, so they were bare. Charlotte was bare, and bringing all of the patients down to us, including the morning of the tornado, they had 2 critical patients. Their medical director established a rendezvous point system so that the Charlotte County medics would stay in Charlotte County. They transferred to strike teams at the rendezvous points, either north or south. The north point went out because Sarasota didn't have any capacity. The south point stayed in. For stable patients, they were moved down to Lee County hospitals. Unstables, like a 4-year-old drowning at 10 o'clock in the morning in front of the tornado, they just took a Charlotte County medic and brought him down here. So there were awful things that were happening. There were hospitals were closing. Again, the non-acute patients moved out even to Miami, Paul. Afterwards, Marshall, yesterday morning, we had a call because they were still desperate in Sarasota. I put him in contact with Zuver because we had created a central band Eagles. So we had the regional Eagles from Pinellas and Hillsborough up to Volusia. And Chris said they had capacity, so he was talking with Marshall about helping Sarasota County. Sorry. Regional Eagles. Regional Eagles.
Are you sorry? We want to thank you. That was great. So anyway, I was trying to see if I could get Kim on the phone to see what happened up in the Panhandle, but couldn't get him upgraded there. But
we can make Kim able to talk.
Yeah, we'll see. But I didn't know if versus last time, what happened the last time around versus this time. That's all. Because I think they were relative.
Hey, Pete, I'm here.
Okay, good. So Kim, just wanted to ask, did you have how much of an effect did you have? You had more of a problem with Helene, right? Or was this just the same and just made it worse? And what's happening up on the peninsula?
Yeah, actually, Helene passed.
I meant the Panhandle. I'm sorry about that. The whole thing is the peninsula, right? Yeah, right. Go ahead.
Yeah. Helene passed to the east of Tallahassee. They were on the very fringe of it, and there was some damage there. So basically, west of Tallahassee, we got a very minimal effect from Helene. Milton basically did not affect us at all.
Right. All right.
And so we did well for Milton, but little damage from Helene, and most of it was to the east of Tallahassee. So the Panhandle, and for the most part, fared very well.
Okay, got it. Before I go on further with this, I don't know if there's anything else we want to do in terms of beating the dead horse a little bit, but I want to make sure we have some takeaways from this to think
I
about.
got one for you, Paul.
Yes, go ahead.
So what do you do when half of your county loses sewage, water, and power at the same time?
Right.
And you have to figure out how to keep those hospitals running. The biggest thing is for us in the immediate was environmental control and water for doing different things. So a couple of lessons learned. Chiller towers you can fill using tanker trucks. Airport crash fire rescue trucks, it turns out, have lots of good water on them that you
Right.
can keep
Yeah.
a chiller tower running for an hour or two while you get a tanker mission in.
Yeah.
So we did that. There are some pretty cool resources, like we have temporary reverse osmosis plants set up at all of the hospitals. I have to tell you, I applied a lot of lessons learned from the Lee County thing a few years ago, because I sat at the ESF 8 desk at the state during the Lee County with Lee Health losing their water and stuff. And all of those things came into play yesterday morning, trying to keep 6 hospitals working in those conditions with no power, no water, and no sewage. It is a challenge to do that. I mean, you think water, there's about 4 different kinds of water that a hospital needs. They need functional water for flushing toilets and cooling towers. They need potable water for drinking, food, and that kind of thing. And they actually also need deionized water for running labs, doing all that kind of stuff. So having to source on an emergency basis 3 or 4 different kinds of water, fuel, medical gas, so air gas, in addition to oxygen, all these things to stand up a hospital and keep them afloat so you don't end up having to evacuate, the 50 NICU babies in the hospital is really, really interesting.
Hey, when you said keep the hospitals afloat, was that a bad choice of words?
No, no, it's intentional, Paul. We got a lot of friggin' water around here, okay?
But that's an excellent point, because, for example, in Houston, a lot of times when this big floods that happened, they got actually into reservoir systems, okay? And so now they have these huge tanks that are going up like this, but that's a really important point. We had zero, well, during Katrina, we were there, we had zero water. And by the way, one other thing that I don't know if we had the problem this time, you tell me, but during Katrina and during events like this where there are no internet, there's no power, no nothing, people are all on their cell phones, and basically you can't get in because there's so many people on the cell phones that you can't get through. The network is overwhelmed.
So we lost connectivity at 2 hospitals. We were able to deploy temporary cell towers as well as high bandwidth Starlink systems to those hospitals to get them back on. As far as your own personal communications, plug for FirstNet, you can get your phone prioritized. We have a comms guy at our EOC who can bump my cell phone number up so it's the first priority on the towers. And then the Starlink high bandwidth solutions can help because a lot of EMRs won't work without network connectivity. So those are good. And then we have mobile cell towers that we can actually, they're called cows. I know we're not supposed to say that for our computers in the hospital anymore, but they're still called cows, and you can park those outside the hospital to get their connectivity back as well.
So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because, yes, we've been talking about hurricanes, and you could sit there and say here in Sarajevo, we don't get hurricanes, right? But you could get deep freezes, you could get earthquakes, you could get a whole bunch of other things that could affect us. Who'd ever think that we'd be frozen out in Texas like we did 2 years ago? And there's a lot of these issues that will come up. So with power being out, did you have to do, or does anybody know of anybody who had problems with getting people to the dialysis things, or they're on home oxygen machines, did those problems come up?
Oh yeah, we have thousands of people in special needs shelters right now because they're power dependent for their oxygen concentrators. Dialysis needs not only power, but dialysis needs water and a lot of it. So we just moved, I don't know, 30 dialysis patients out of the city from one hospital to another hospital somewhere else so they could have their dialysis. DaVita has a really cool big mobile response unit, but it still needs basic infrastructure stuff to function to the best of my knowledge. So this isn't really specific to a hurricane or anything else. It's when basic infrastructure services are compromised to a hospital, a lot of issues come up, and dialysis is actually a huge one for water.
Yes. And there are people on home ventilators and things like that. But anyways, the reason why I bring this up, I'm going to wrap it here, is that this is not just a problem for Florida. It's a big issue, and you have to be thinking about all of those things ahead of time as part of the EMS system. And I wanted to make sure, many of us know this, but I wanted to reinforce it because sometimes, until it happens again, we kind of get kind of lax about it because we have so many other things on our plate. But that's what it's about. Jim,
Hey,
go
Paul,
ahead.
can I
Just want
make
to
a
say one of
comment?
the
Yeah, in a second. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, Paul, I can't help but talk about MD Ally and Meg Marino. When we suspended operations, you have to do something with the people who are calling 911 for EMS. And we set up a nice relationship with our telehealth provider and
Nice.
found a way to successfully use MD Ally to keep from being overwhelmed with hold calls, because we were in a 12-hour period of no transport services. So Meg helped us a lot, and thanks to you.
Okay, good. All right. Hey, what were you going to say, Kim?
Yeah, and also I wanted to compliment Pulsera. I was able to utilize Pulsera to help a couple of the crews that needed med direction during the evacuation of a couple of patients. So I think that platform was absolutely beneficial in this type of setting as well.
Good. All right. And then
I'm gonna hop
hey,
off, Paul, but I just want to say for the last thing, it's a surreal moment when you put together a mission request package that includes 600 ambulances, 20 fixed wing, 20 helicopters, and the USS Comfort, and nobody blinks an eye. They go, yeah,
right.
literally, I was told at one point night before last that they are launching the Comfort from Mobile for us.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty
All
cool.
right, I'm gonna hop off now. Take care,
Hey,
everyone.
yes, and then
Yeah,
good
I
luck
guess.
to you, and especially with your home and your family. I'm just glad you're safe. Okay. I'll
Thanks.
see
All
you
right,
later. Okay.
take care.
Adios. And then Peter, how about lastly, Brevard? Anything you guys did? I didn't hear anything further from Orlando. Anything you
Yeah.
could tell us there?
Yeah, I spoke to him. They lost power, but aside from that, they said they did pretty well. The cars got damaged.
They
So
closed Camp
this
Canaveral
was all
Hospital.
by this, right? They did. And I think throughout the state, Paul, there was. I think the number I heard, Ken can probably verify, there was like 350 or so healthcare facilities evacuated in total across the state. It was some massive number. I'm not sure if Jim knows better, but it was a massive evacuation effort. I know here in Hollywood, we took a lot of patients. Miami, they took a lot of patients, but this effort to move these sick patients across the state was pretty big.
Okay.
The number this morning, 213 healthcare facilities, 17 hospitals.
Wow.
Jim, I wish you would do your homework.
And then Paul, the other question I had is, I wonder how many EMS systems, fire departments are ready. Like, for example, I just bought Starlink for my office in case.
Yeah.
Because Starlink now is so easily obtained, I wonder how many fire departments or cities themselves are just equipped with Starlink so they can get up and running. Jim, are you guys using that, or did you have to wait for the state to come and provide that?
Waited for the state, and we had Pulsera, part of it implemented. We could use better communication system.
Jim, is that going to be a good survey that we could document, and then that way it alerts people and gets them educated about it?
Could be, yeah.
All
right,
it's
good.
so cheap. It's so cheap too. Yeah. Right.
Just like me, right? Hey, Kim, you had one more thing, because I got to move on. I got to get to John Jew if he's still on. So, okay, go ahead.
No, sir, I have nothing else.
Oh, okay. You had your hand up. That's what I was wondering. Okay, but let's real quickly go up and see if there's anything else to talk about in terms of North Carolina. Joe Zalkin, are you on by any chance?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, anything to add to our conversation, particularly with North Carolina? I think I mentioned last time is that when I first started putting together disaster courses, about whenever it was 25 years ago, one of the things I learned was that most deaths in the United States came from drowning. Of course, with the flooding and so on that happens after hurricanes, that was the number one cause of death from some disasters, whether it was earthquakes or whatever, wildfires or whatever. And of note about that was that most of them were in North Carolina. So the same things are still the same today than they ever have been, right? So
Yeah, but I don't think we were prepared for a storm 500 miles away from the coast
yes.
to impact our mountain area. What I was impressed with, and thank you for those who sent response teams, during the height of the storm, 911 calls are being rerouted to the eastern side of the state and being taken in unaffected communities and relayed by state radio network back to those home counties.
That's wild. So something else, one more thing to be aware of and be prepared for or plan for. That's interesting then. So, all right, got it. And the last thing I want to talk about is I see Rob Glatter is on. You wrote an article based on our conversations last week for Forbes, right? If I remember correctly. Can you tell us what the outcome was there?
Yeah, I got a lot of response from it. Certainly, interestingly, some senators reach out to me. One from South Carolina, another from North Carolina, thanking me from the standpoint of talking about supply chain management, and also comments from Jim as well as Paul Binninger from Mass General. And I think that they appreciated, mentioning as Jim did about ASPR's response and really coordinating the issues regarding, supply of IV fluids in this country and how the lack of regionalization is an issue. You knock one factory out that controls 2/3 of the IV fluid production, dialysis production, and there's a problem. So they've got to regionalize and diversify where these factories are put. Now, there's tax incentives that really link the location of where these facilities are placed.
All right.
That is one of the issues, in terms of jobs and tax incentives, why these factories are in certain locales in the United States. So I think this has to be addressed, and congressionally, I think they're looking into this. And these congressmen are going to reach out to me again in terms of like what we can do collectively.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And then stay in touch with Jim because he always keeps track of that stuff.
Yeah, it was very helpful for Jim's comments, and they really appreciated it. So they very thankful.
Okay,
Okay.
Bob, but you did the research and looked into all of this and are connecting the pieces.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. We couldn't have done that without you.
No, my pleasure. And thanks for your comments and really
We're
so
glad
helpful. And
we're
they
glad
may
you're
reach
part-
out to you. So yeah.
I'm just really glad you're part of the team, and you've been participating, and especially with
appreciate that.
and Anya as well.
My
I think
pleasure.
you guys have enjoyed the time with us as well, right? So
Absolutely.
okay, good. All right. So let's then move on. A couple things I did want to get to is Clayton, you guys are having problems with water yourselves in Long Beach. What's going on there? Can you tell me about that? Sorry if I caught you off guard, Clayton Kazan.
No, not at all.
Aren't you guys having some water issues in Long Beach, by the way? And what's that about?
Had some massive issues with their water system, and they issued a boil order so that for the city of Long Beach, for some specific zip codes within Long Beach, they're requiring them to boil water for 2 minutes and then cool it before drinking. I don't know what the heck is going on. The other interesting thing is we've had a couple cases of avian flu identified up in our Central Valley. So far, all in agricultural workers, and there hasn't been any person-to-person spread, but it's caught the attention of our public health authorities.
So, so you don't know why they have the water issues in Long Beach in the first place, right? So
my understanding
No.
was that was just a water main break. It was a fairly large one, but it's resolved at this time.
okay, got it. So so that's interesting then. Okay, just good. So again, it's coming back to infrastructure. Now speaking of the avian flu, and then we also had some percolating Marburg issues, let alone dengue now becoming significant. I was gonna have, Eileen comment on it. I don't know if she's here yet, on our show. She was saying she just came back from Borneo, so her Turk or diurnal clock might be a little screwed up a little bit. But John, do you have anything to report on for us while in case she doesn't get on? John Jew?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, so let's
Yeah.
address the three of them: the avian flu, Marburg, and then dengue. Okay.
Yeah, the avian flu, we're keeping a close eye on this. This is there's 17 reports right now. We're the only one that's not connected with dairy or agriculture is one in Missouri. So CDC has not basically let the us know about where the contact is. So the bottom line is that avian flu in certain contexts can be transmitted from mammals and avians into humans. And we're watching that very closely because obviously it requires only 1 or 2 mutations for it to become widespread right now. So the transmission is of significant concern. As far as Marburg, we actually got notified yesterday that there were people, these were healthcare providers that were in Rwanda and basically came back and they were persons under monitoring. It's like Ebola all over again. Does that make sense as well? And so we had to basically dust off our Ebola response and basically figure out how to respond to an Ebola type of event. By the way,
and let me reiterate what you said already, which is it's fascinating that it was in healthcare workers that that
yes,
specific,
yes,
right?
they were the ones that are coming back to the United States as well as Europe. Most of them are healthcare workers that've been exposed. They're not. Let's be very clear. They don't have Marburg. They've been working in the setting of Marburg. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
got it.
Okay,
I understand now. Okay,
yes.
got it.
Okay, so they're basically exposed and they're under monitoring right now.
Okay.
For people that know, there's 2 strains of Marburg, and one of them is almost extinct. So there's only really one strain. What's new is that there is a Sabin vaccine that is actually an adenovirus vaccine that has a glycoprotein attached to it, and they're in phase 1 and phase 2 studies. And the phase 1 and animal studies are very, very good. So there is potential for widespread vaccination for Marburg in the near future. The Ebola vaccine does not work. Does that make sense as well? So I think this is a unique situation, but they are actually vaccinating in a phase 2 and phase 3 trial in Rwanda and the neighboring countries right now, 7 to 10,000. And it's a Sabin vaccine that was produced in Italy. Thanks to our European colleagues again.
Yeah, especially those Italianos. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's great. But anyways, so I thought that was pretty interesting that was percolating up again. And so just wanted to make sure we have in our dispatch centers and our paramedics, part of the thing, if you go to see an ill person, is to ask recent travel, right? Just got to be there, that kind of thing. So, all right.
Yeah, we had to, honestly, we had to scramble for about half a day to dust off all the old documents and figure out where our hazmat team was and the whole 9 yards. This was like bad memories all over again. But I think this group dust off your Ebola response stuff, and you need to be sort of ready.
Well, it was interesting. I remember when Mike warned me about this, Mike Osterholm, like in May about Ebola. And so we did have everybody think, and we made sure our dispatchers and our paramedics were asking those questions. And remember, we had that first case in Dallas. What was interesting is the guy went to the emergency department on his own on Friday and then was discharged or whatever, And then on Sunday, we came and picked him up. And that was the first thing we asked. And we found out he had just come from whatever. And so we immediately said, we alerted everybody and made sure the emergency department was protected as well as we got there. So I think EMS can play an invaluable role there. And that was a good example of it right there. All right. So dengue, right? And I think we'll go to Clayton in a second because he's had 5 cases of dengue in the LA County area, non-travelers, locally acquired. So
Well, actually, it's not surprising. I think, Eileen, we've been predicting that for a long period of time. And
Right.
actually, I think dengue is going to go into the entire southwest and southeast portion. And you're going to see, dust off your 1930s and 1940s map. And that's where dengue is going to occur as well. So it's really,
Tell me more about that. Drill down on that one a little bit. My
yeah.
1930s, 40s
Well,
map.
the dengue was fairly prevalent all the way up to Tennessee and Kentucky, and all the way up to Northern California as well. And so, and obviously, our Puerto Rican colleagues and the entire South Coast, as dengue is part of the normal environment. We see dengue in travelers to Mexico, not on a fairly frequent basis as well. Fortunately, we haven't seen dengue hemorrhagic fever a lot.
Yeah, good. Okay, then you guys did a good job, but we may want to bring it, if this is going to continue, then we might want to bring it back again as a discussion. And I always like one of my little mnemonic things that I always took back has been the issue about retroorbital pain. That is this bizarre thing besides the GI symptoms, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Anything else you would bullet that makes you think about that?
No, I think the real key is usually hemorrhagic fever. They're going to be in shock, so they're going to get your attention. We're going to probably miss the routine dengue because it looks like regular flu or any other illnesses, diarrhea, fever, myalgias, headaches, and at times rash.
Either way, be thinking about it, right? And
Yeah.
if that's someone come in, it's not just sepsis, right? Or whatever it
Correct.
be, correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when it's hemorrhagic, does it pretty much show up that you have, petechiae or anything like that around your body? Tell us about that.
Yeah, you'll get ecchymosis as well as petechiae. Yeah, it's hemorrhagic fever. In other words, your platelets will be low, and you'll have bleeding in severe cases.
So you might be thinking about meningococcus, but you also got to be plugging in dengue on that list.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, got it. So thanks a lot. Anyway, so as we're here at this point, let's go overseas, talk real quickly to some of anybody have any questions or answers or additional comments before I go over to talk to people overseas first? Okay, if not, let's go over to Fiona. What's happening over in UK? Anything new to report? Sorry if I caught you off guard, Fiona. Oh, she had to leave for another meeting, so sorry, I missed her altogether. I just saw her notes down there. Anything new, and how's the pregnancy going so far? Okay, on your end, Tatiana?
Hi, yeah, well, I'm doing great, thanks. But what we do have here in Bosnia for the first time in maybe 5, 6, or 7 years are very devastating floods around 60 kilometers from Sarajevo, from the capital. And it seems now that they were caused, now that they're starting to analyze everything, by illegal cutting down of forests, which led to stone mines just when the water started sort of falling down, and the stone just went down into the villages and made a pretty serious damage. So we've been sending teams from here over there to help, even though I think after the first day, everything was just, retrieval of the people that didn't survive, unfortunately.
Oh,
So yeah,
God.
that's something that's going on at the moment.
That sounds awful then.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting about the root cause there, that they finally figured that one out. So,
yeah, because it's obviously a problem that hasn't been addressed before, and nobody sort of thinks about those things until something like this happens. So I think that
it sounds like an odd time of year, because usually that would happen in the spring when the mountains are melting, that kind of thing, right? So that was interesting that it came up. Were you having rainstorms, or what propelled this?
yeah, we actually didn't even have that much rain, maybe 2 or 3 days. I'm not sure how much rain exactly in terms of volume, but nothing that hasn't happened before.
Okay.
So what the experts are saying here is that due to that sort of forest, the cutting down of the forest, that which is sort of like a natural barrier for waters, that everything sort of got saturated on top of the hills and then just started erupting downwards, and that's what happened.
Okay, got it. Well, that's interesting. All right, good. Glad you're doing well. Great to see you again as well. Okay. Let me jump over to Paul Banerjee. I had missed you earlier before. I wanted to get you on to see just real quickly, if you don't mind, to see what happened in, because one of the areas they were concerned about is Central Florida. I thought we were predicting maybe Epcot might have got it wiped out, right? But how did you do, since you're right in the middle of it in Lake County and then of course in your own territory, Polk County?
Yeah, so basically the hurricane decided to visit us, go right through the middle of our state, middle of our county. We had a lot of flash flooding in northern Lakeland, so there's a lot of flooding there. We had some sinkholes that happened as well, a lot of water rescues in the North Lakeland area. Basically, we didn't allow any hospital to go on diversion, although they wanted to, but we got through it. I think we did lose a couple of lives in Polk. Otherwise, everyone did a great job, and we were very fortunate, especially compared to Pinellas and Hillsborough County. So we were very blessed.
Did you get many tornadoes there as well? Is it all mostly down south, like Angus was describing?
I think the tornadoes were equal opportunity. I think they decided to bother everybody. We got the first tornadoes that hit as the first bands went in, but I think they were primarily on the East Coast, towards like the Palm Coast area, and I know Wellington had a really big one too.
Yes.
But we had a few, nothing like that they did, but we had the first ones that came on. We actually had the second highest wind gust from the hurricane in Mulberry. It was 97 miles an hour.
Ah, wow. Hey, so one important question is was your bursar's office at Polk County disturbed in any way, or is it still up and operating? Do you know?
Fortunately for you, it's still up and running.
Good. All right, that's all I did. We'll leave it at that.
Hey.
Inside joke with Paul and I. But anyways, okay, let's go talk to other people. We haven't talked to Mark for a little while. So Mark, why don't you come on? Mark Cohen, are you still there by any chance?
Yep, I'm still here.
And then Shay, I'm going to come to you. Anything new we should know about from Los Angeles?
No, not a whole lot new that's going on right now. We've just been building our training calendar for videolaryngoscopy, and working on getting Cyana kits. That's sort of the next project coming after. So using a bunch of protocols that other people have given me to build out our own, making things very easy, but nothing groundbreaking otherwise.
Yeah, did we end up getting you hooked up yet, or is my fault with Pierre to learn a little bit about Olympics and see what he found or what he could pass on to you, or you can just look at his email here if you want and try to reach out to him. Have you made that contact yet?
I have not, but we do need to start moving forward on that because it's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, you'll see his email is, in that email list that got sent out. You'll find it in there, or I can send it to you if you need any contact. I'll get you his cell and his whatever. He'll be really glad to help you out. He's fantastic. So, all right, good. Let's see. Wanted to talk to Ben in Baltimore because we hadn't talked to you for a while, and or missed you as you jumped off. Ben, anything new from your area?
Yeah, I am muted. Hey guys.
Oh, Jenny?
Ben's here. Well, he's coming. He's right across the room.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hey, so I just wanted to know from you guys anything we need to know about from the Baltimore area.
We have not had any hurricanes, tornadoes, and/or major flooding in the past 2 weeks, so we are
dengue or dengue
that we know of. One of our CPC cases was just dengue, though, so you never know. It's coming.
Yeah, we don't have much, and thank you very much. It's always good to learn and hear about patterns. We are very much in the throes of the opioid restitution funding, trying to work out some linkages to care for harm reduction. Had a really good conversation with Bob Dunn in Detroit about their kind of model. And then really for us, trying to work through the particulars of nurse triage. Again, trying to fall in line with DC. I know Dr. Wittberg has a lot of stuff to say about that. So we're really just working through the challenges of trying to kind of unburden the system from really the persistently increased demand. But that's, I think, all of what's new in Baltimore, really.
Okay, got it. Yeah, Rob was going to try to get on, but he's doing a whole bunch of interviews right now for a certain position there. And so he's been tied up, busy with that. And a few other people are on the road right now doing various things, including Jeff Goodloe's. A lot of people are on shift today. So I'm actually going to be maybe reaching out and talk about maybe it's Friday not the best. People are doing that. Maybe I'm moving the day again just to see if we help out with that. I don't know. We'll never probably find a perfect time, but that's it. And now having the harbor messed up for so long, is that up and running and everything okay from your end?
So I think the local people are having some issues still with just the increased traffic in the back roads from that standpoint, but it doesn't affect our operations.
Okay. And then, so there were no, as far as you're concerned, those are the only long-term impacts that we're seeing out of the bridge crash. Okay, got it. And how long are there going to be more repairs going on?
I think I don't follow local politics, my lord. But they do you know what they're doing?
No, I think they're taking down the last two piers that were
Okay.
that's the first step, is to take down the ones still standing and then start again.
And the traffic is mostly open. I think the other issue was, they've had that port strike, which has also been a challenge, but
Right.
I know that port is functional, so that continues to be an ongoing area of surveillance over there. But at least that catastrophe and a lot of the infrastructure has been restored, just kind of returning back to the baseline.
Okay, I was just curious. I hadn't been following that well. All right, let's jump out to Denver.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, Shay, can you tell us anything about what's happening with either you or Denver Fire?
Yeah, thankfully no hurricanes and tornadoes yet. I guess you never
Not
really
yet.
know. Not yet, you never know. Our Denver Health HIT team, part of the Marburg response plan, is just kind of getting spun up a little bit and getting prepared, turning on our dispatch screening, kind of just getting our crews ready in case we end up with something, but let's hope not. Other than that, we're kind of status quo around here, thankfully.
Yeah, I think 90% of it is even in the dispatch office. Sometimes because you're doing, even after you dispatch as the pre-arrival instructions or wherever, or make sure people ask up front, have recent travel. It's got to be aggressive about that. It's my only advice that I would pass on. Hey Shay, do you know much about what happened with the gold mine collapse or whatever happened out there?
I don't know anything intricate about that. I just started reading about it. So if I get an update for next week, I'll definitely pass it along.
Yeah,
I was just reading about it.
I thought it was kind of interesting. It was bizarre because it's a tourist attraction and now you got dead people there. So that'll be interesting to hear what happened. And then were there anything particular aspects of the rescue effort that were unique that we all should learn from? That's all. Okay.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find out. Absolutely.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Shay. Appreciate it. Libby, let's go out to your realm. It must be getting really late there. I mean, at nighttime, right? You're probably approaching like what, 6:30 or something like that already, or correct?
Almost.
Okay. So welcome again,
Yeah.
folks. Anything new to happen out in Hawaii right now?
No, it's just interesting hearing what everybody's saying. We've had some travel related dengue cases, and for a while, a few years back, there was a local hold in the Big Island that they worked really hard to eradicate, thankfully. And then also interesting hearing about Pulsara and the disasters. If anybody has a lot of familiarity using Pulsara for statewide disaster, work, can you just throw your name in the chat? And because we're working on it right now, trying to get it on board for this, get it into statewide system.
And learn about
said
Star.
Dave-
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Peter.
It's a Dave Miramontes or Stein Bronsky is who I would reach out to, Libby.
Okay,
They have,
thanks.
they
Yeah,
have,
we've been
they have the
talking.
most, they have the most experience with that.
And did they have the
Okay.
Starlink as well, Peter?
Oh, I don't know.
That's the other thing I
Yeah,
think you know about, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because it really all you need is a plug, and you have very high speed internet. I mean, I used mine just to practice the other day. I was getting 300 on the download. With like literally took me about 5 minutes to get going.
Okay.
So it could really populate my entire office with one cord, basically. So it would be good for a fire department, or even if you're out there on a mission doing something.
Yeah, Dave was on earlier today. I wish I'd gotten him on for this purpose, but contacted him. That would be really good then. Anything else then, Libby? And then Libby, obviously people don't think about it, but hurricanes it's just your small target, relatively speaking. But if it happens, it's going to be a big deal if you get hit by a hurricane out there, right? So.
Yeah, and more so Oahu, less so than neighbor islands, because Oahu, has 3/4 of the population of the state. So there's about 1 million people on Oahu. And
Right.
we have resources we can send to the neighbor islands, to Maui and Kauai and whatnot. But if it goes the other way around, there's so many high rises and such density on Oahu, that would be disastrous.
Yeah, so this is a big deal for you to know. And then all those golf carts getting wiped out by salt water, right? That would be disastrous, right, for the tourism business. Speaking of
Yeah, I
which,
didn't know I didn't
Go
know
ahead.
that about golf carts and lithium batteries in salt water. That's
Oh
interesting.
God, yeah. It was really impressive because it blew everybody away when we first started seeing it a few years ago with some of the hurricanes in Florida. You get into that brackish water. And then again, remember when you do have brackish water or salt water, keeping Vibrio in the back of your head if someone gets cellulitis. So, all right. Other little, what do you call it? And tornadoes,
Yeah.
all those kinds of things. All right.
Thankfully, no tornadoes here, but yes, on the Vibrio.
Yep. Okay. Let's move on then over to let's see, who would I want to talk to next? There was someone there I did want to talk to, and I'll go through my list real quickly. Okay. Well, meanwhile, Peter, anything else that you report out of your neck of the woods before I go on to I'm going to probably end this early, by the way, because I have to get to an airplane. I am going to a not so sunny Fort Lauderdale, right? What's the weather like today, Peter?
It's actually not bad. It's actually been nice the last couple of days.
Okay, good.
So yeah, it's
That's-
good.
I'll be there this afternoon, and then I may head up and visit some of our friends on the East Coast. So we'll see how it goes. All right. But Peter, anything else as the president of NAMSP Florida, anything to report from that end across statewide with your docs?
No, I think we're looking forward to the meeting coming up in January. We just had on the webinar a great presentation by Dr. Jason Mansour on OMI replacing STEMI. So I think that was a very well received.
In fact, I'm going to tell you, like he always wanted to give a longer talk, but I think he'd be more effective as a shorter talk. But I think the points were really good, and I'm going to have him on here. I think I thought it was really good. So when he says OMI, just for people who don't know, they're talking about occlusive MI, and I love the point he made was that if somebody has belly pain and a high white count, those are signs of something. It's not the something, right? The appendicitis or whatever it might be. And so when people see a STEMI, it's a sign. It doesn't mean that. And there are other things that could actually help you know that this is an occlusive MI and OMI. And I think the thinking process, the whole change in the paradigm is fantastic. And he gives you some good examples in that talk. So I want to probably have him come on with us again. He's fantastic. I'm glad I got to get to know him. Recently. So.
And I think that the most fascinating thing is this concept of these folks, the guys, the Smiths of the world who created that the OMI manifesto back in the day. They've now created an app, and apparently you cannot download it in the US yet. But they've created an app that is better at diagnosing OMI than any human being, any cardiologist. And so the question I had for him is whether or not that AI model, will that be embedded into the Zolls and the Life Packs of the world, or will our medics end up, opening the app, taking a picture of the 12 lead, and giving them a diagnosis, 90% OMI, and then we call it into the hospital, and then the cardiologists don't say, we don't know what you're talking about, but because even Jason said that he's got to really convince his cardiologist to take those folks who are the NSTEMI to the cath lab when he knows they have an occlusive MI. So I think that transition is going to be very interesting when it comes to EMS.
It reminds me of the day when I was doing the issue with giving IV fluids for people who were still actively bleeding, and the trauma surgeons not buying off on it for quite a while, that kind of thing. But that's exactly right. I think we have to do a better job of educating. Either way, as long as we're doing our job in identifying this thing right away, alerting a cath lab as soon as possible, I think eventually they'll come around. But I think that is the biggest problem we're facing right now with that. So anyways, bottom line for those who haven't heard this, be thinking about occlusive MI versus a STEMI, right? STEMI is a picture, a clue, a sign, but it doesn't necessarily, and just because you're not having a STEMI, whatever, then it could still be an occlusive MI going on that you got to do. And in this case, they usually say, well, let's just wait. Let's get some troponins. Let's get some whatever, repeat EKGs, and that delays the onset to getting them fixed. So that was good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Peter has a good video. Then that'll be an excellent one for you guys.
Yeah, that's his video. And then the last thing I'll mention is that in Palm Beach County, we're getting ready to start to launch maybe the first. I'm not sure if other people have done it, but we're actually going to be giving plasma, cold liquid plasma, for TBI in Palm Beach County. So we have introduced a new protocol. It'll go live here at the end of the month, and I think that plasma is going to be coming in into vogue probably for things like sepsis, burns, and other things. And now that we have it, it's cheap, $60 a pop. And we're actually going to be collecting our data and seeing where that goes. Working with Holcomb on that. So that's
Now,
it.
Peter, when we say TBI, are we just talking about a person that has a head injury in the field and we're presuming it's a TBI because they have an altered mental status or whatever it might be criteria, right?
AMS, yeah, AMS is going to be like the thing that obviously looking at GCS, etc. But obviously we're trying to pick up the patients who have a bleed, but more like in the severe TBI category rather than someone who's got a head injury and is doing fine.
Yeah. So it was interesting because in the really good study that Schreiber did with TXA, they found that about 55% of the people that met the criteria, in terms of Glasgow or whatever they were looking at, the scores they were looking at and how they'd enter into the study. About 55% later had a CAT scan proven bleed in the head. But the nice thing, about 45% of them didn't. So it was actually a built-in control group. So they did get the TXA and it turned out to be safe. So that was really cool. So I was wondering, are we going to still give TXA and the plasma in these cases?
That's actually a great question. And we passed it by the neurointerventionalist. Their problem was with giving it to patients with potentially an ischemic stroke, an LVO. And so it's hard for us because oftentimes when we get to the patient, as you all know, we're not sure if it's an LVO or not. So we have to put some language in there to, yes, give TXA if you think it's a bleed, but to withhold TXA if you think it's anything ischemic. And I look for data on that, TXA, giving TXA to a patient with an LVO. And the only thing I can get were all the neurointerventionists saying, yeah, we probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
So I don't know if anyone on this call has any take on that.
Well, so I'm not so concerned about it. We're talking about people who have a traumatic injury, right? In this case, kind of thing. So
well, that's the thing. That's the subset. If it's clearly trauma, then we're going to give the TXA.
Right.
But if we're not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg, stroke, and then they hit their head, we're just going to not give it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that. That's exactly right. Okay. Good.
Okay.
All right, good. All right, well, fantastic. Anybody else have any comment or know anything about that? By the way, Peter, I tried to do the video and it didn't come up quite yet, but hopefully we'll get to it.
It's uploading as we speak.
Okay, good. All right, let's see. We talked to Ben, Clayton. Anything else to add, Clayton, before we go on? Then I'm going to try to see if I can get to some of the other folks that we have here getting close. I guess John Kramer got off. I was going to talk to him.
The only thing I would add is just that we've been having meetings. There was a bill that went through called AB 40 last year, which in California establishes a benchmark wall time standard of no more than 30 minutes, 90% of the time, which seems a little ridiculous. But in the meetings to put this formally into our regulations, it was shocking and really disappointing to hear the hospitals continue to try to shoot holes in EMS data and to keep trying to dodge any accountability over this issue. Other than that, doesn't matter. It's in law, so it's coming. But their arguments were extremely disappointing.
So what's in law? Let me make sure I understand. What does it say or state? Or they say regulations will be established, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what it passed last year, and what it says is all of the local EMS agencies, so basically the county level EMS agencies, will gather wall time data for the hospitals in their jurisdiction, report those up to the state quarterly. And initially, at least, there's no teeth. It's going to be publicly reported out, but eventually everyone, including the author of the bill, admits that the next step is to add teeth to it, whether it's fines or whatever.
There is some motivation, quite frankly, if you get them exposed like that. So that's what Ken found, in Palm Beach County. So it's a good start anyways, I think. The other thing on our end is to make sure there is accountability, that it's not just our paramedics hanging out there too, because that has happened in some places, not all the time, because they need a break, that kind of thing. I don't know how one does that. Peter, have you looked at that before as well? We've talked about that, correct?
Yeah. So now there are certain folks who have the ability. I know ESO does, but we're actually using the time that the signature at the bedside is happening as the time of transfer. So after they get the signature and they want to go talk to the nurses or go to go to the bathroom, that's all not being counted. And that's how that's being done. So we have a report that goes right by that signature time. And if you're an ESO customer, you can get that.
Yep. Good.
Actually, that is the exact time we'll be using as the stop time. Ironically, the start time we've been saying is, the button push of at hospital. And they're like, well, but you don't understand. Some of our campuses are large and that could take them 5 minutes just to get from where they arrive on campus to what it was crazy. And we go, well, we'll use AVL data and geofencing. Well, we don't know if that's trustworthy. Oh, okay. I guess you guys don't use Uber, Lyft, Domino's, or anything else that uses that technology. It was crazy.
Yeah, I have to admit I don't use Domino's. That's great. All right. Well, so that's cool. That's great discussion. I want to make sure everybody understands those nuances there. So thank you both for bringing that up. So very, very good. All right. And let's just jump over. Eric, anything on the blood realm, anything new happening?
Yeah, so we just added, we're up to 183 agencies. Got a few more that are in progress. The Thor meeting was in Miami. We actually left a little early there. There was a hurricane coming up the coast.
I hear.
And then the AABB Thor meeting is this Saturday or next Saturday in Houston. And also that's when they'll do the standards presentation to the masses to finally get that approved.
Okay. Great. Thanks for the quick update. Tell John, I'm sorry I was trying to get him on, but didn't get a chance to do that. All right. And then let's see, Jim, anything else to report out of Lee County that we need to know about? Or anything else from Ed or from the fire chiefs at all?
Yeah, the fire chiefs are working on our IV fluid shortage issues with us, trying to ask Congress and ASPR to be more active. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good. John Jew, anything out of Portland beyond our conversation about the Marburg? John, have I lost you? John Jew? May have lost him by now. And I'm planning to get out because I have to go catch a flight here in a few minutes. They just moved the gate, so it's going to take me about another 5 or 10 minutes more. John Jew, are you there? Okay. What was that movie? Ferris Bueller, right? All right. Then let's move on down to Libby, Mark, we talked to, Paul, we talked to. Okay, Roger, anything you need to know about out of your realm?
Good. Hang on.
You're saying what? You're good?
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to make sure I had the unmute button. Most recently, we've had, ongoing progress with our blood program. We're up to 15 units now in 14 patients, and we continue to see significant improvements in shock index. One of the things we found, and I was wondering about other people's experiences, of not 50%, but something around a third of our patients are medical patients that are benefiting from this and otherwise meet criteria. And I was just wondering if other jurisdictions had that experience with having a lot of success with the medical patients that have significant hemorrhage. So that's the major thing since just a week ago.
The answer to that is that a third of the cases is about right for like San Antonio, who's had most experience with this in terms of number of units. So that's exactly what they're seeing. And they have also pretty comparable experience. It gets a little dicey when you get to the person with the, cirrhosis and various other complications there. But but for the most part, that's a big, and then of course the classic case we showed at Eagles with the young girl with the tonsillectomy, right? So the answer is there's good reason. Anything else you'd add to that, Eric, beyond what I
so we're like 60-40 because I have a little bit older population. Component therapy transfusion number 1 in 2016 was a GI bleed, and the first whole blood transfusion was an OB complication. So yeah, medicine is pretty. We try and preach that across the country, but most people don't start with medicine patients.
Yeah.
And for multifactorial reasons also, we're having our official rollout to the public by the county executives level of government on October 25th at 11 in the morning. So we will have been at it since August 8th, but before the equivalent press conference. And one of the most impressive rollouts I saw was Dr. Wittberg and the mayor of DC. that's available on YouTube if you ever wanted to see a great job of rolling out a program. They really did a good job. So I don't know if we can partially emulate that. The other thing, Eric, I did want to ask you, is it possible to find out that when we notified Randy, what number were we in that 183? Because I was guessing about 170.
You know,
So I was
the
curious.
list, the updated list just came out. Let me look and see, and I'll send it over to you.
Oh, that'd be great. I appreciate it because I was always curious. And I'm actually going to include that 183 in a slideshow I'm preparing where I may be speaking very briefly as a part of a panel at ATMD at NAMSP, Advanced Topics. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll send it over to you.
We actually, just for a little, to spice things up a little bit, there was a paper that came out of Boston that was negative towards whole blood based on 3 studies that did not involve whole blood. Actually, that had the one paper that they cited was refill, and we all know the problem with that trial. The blood came on at 55 minutes. So we actually wrote a letter to the editor. They actually published the author's response to our letter before they published our letter. So our letter should be published any day now, but we basically came back at the guy and said, you know, we had a whole list of things why we didn't agree with it. But it's just fascinating how there are people still out there who, you know, are looking for an RCT on whole blood. And so we're back to that same story again of people looking at the finances. In this particular case, they were losing the business from their helicopter service down to those communities from for the helicopter, and so there was some, we think, other reasons for that paper. So fascinating politics going on.
So Peter, should we do an RCT with AEDs? I'm not sure if we ever got that done. So
yeah, that and parachute. We haven't seen the parachute AED yet, RCT yet.
All right, I got to get rolling here. So,
all right, Paul, safe travel.
Yeah, Peter, did you notice what I was wearing today? I just want you to know, right?
Yeah, all right.
I'm telling people where I'm going today. That's right. In case I get lost, they can get me on the right flight, correct, in the airport. Anything else? Terry, anything to report on Tucson?
Tucson.
If not, at least he's got his video on, right? That's great. If not, okay. Did I get everybody else? I guess I've gotten everybody else pretty much, I think. Julian, anything else? Any parting words for us today? So anyways, when you claim the hours, you could put in, instead of 1.5 hours, you could go 1.25, you know, if you want. But it was so packed with so much information today that it could count as the full 1.5 hours on that. And then, hey, Peter, if you can, I'll try to tell him too, but tell Jason that was fantastic. I thought that was a really good.
I did. I sent him an email and I let him know that you wanted to talk to him and maybe get him on the program. So yeah, I already sent him an email.
It was great. He reached out to me and had me do a grand rounds for them. So I said, what's your topic? He goes, whatever you want. So I just did a thing where it was something I did that Amal had for me once. Where it was like a potpourri of Paul Pepe's presentations and publications, you know, in the present day or something like that. It was really funny alliteration.
What, did he give you 7 hours to talk? Is that?
No, I did it in 50 minutes. It was really good. And we covered about 7. It's whatever I published this year. But the thing they liked the best, of course, is when I showed them all the video from the Inside the Sphere, right? Because I was talking about our mass gathering publication, right? That kind of thing. So it was good. All right. Well, with that, I'll see you. I hope I see you around. And then, so anyways, I'm going to be busy atoning tomorrow. So I hope you all stay in good shape. Hey, speaking of which, Peter, how did everything go on with your family last week? Okay, did everybody have a good time?
Yeah, we had the Jewish holiday. Everything went well.
Yeah,
and tomorrow's the heavy day. So I'll be
it
out
is
of
that
commission.
day. That's right. I'm gonna be atoning up in Palm Beach County at Station 23. So toning out, right?
Yeah, toning out.
Have a safe pass.
Oh man, that's funny.
Too. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, easy pass, everybody. Take care. I'm gonna head out. Paul, safe travels, everybody.
Happy New Year.
All right.
Thanks.
Happy New Year. Thanks.
You guys too. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.